Hello, if you're a listener of Bring Your Product Idea to Life, you might like to know that I'm running a free call on Thursday the 26th of February for anyone who's selling products on Amazon or planning to and would like some practical support and a chance to talk things through together. I know so many Amazon sellers and I thought it'd be really nice to bring people together. It'll be a really relaxed session. I'll be sharing a few updates on upcoming Amazon changes and there'll be plenty of time for questions and discussion about what's working, what's not, anything you want to chat about Amazon related. You're very welcome to come along and talk, or you can just listen in. I would love to see you there if you're able to join, and you'll find the link to book your place in the show notes for this episode.
Welcome to the Bring Your Product Idea to Life podcast. This is the podcast for you if you're getting started selling products or if you'd like to create your own product to sell. I'm Vicky Weinberg, a product creation coach and Amazon expert. Every week I share friendly, practical advice as well as inspirational stories from small businesses. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to this episode of Bring Your Product Idea to Life. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Carolina Dibb. Carolina is a conversion rate optimisation specialist, drawing on 19 years' experience across Amazon, Mr. Porter, and other leading retailers. Carolina helps independent e-commerce brands use customer behaviour insights to improve their shopping experience and increase their sales. So, as you can probably guess, we spoke a lot today about conversions and how to improve conversions, whether that's on your website, whether that's on Amazon or any other online marketplace. Carolina has so much experience and she has so many practical suggestions for you to really help you understand and improve your conversions. So I would love now to introduce you to Carolina. So hi Caroline, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me, Vicky.
Oh, you're so welcome. Can we please start by you giving an introduction to yourself, your business and what you do?
Yeah, of course. I'm Carolina and I'm an e-commerce consultant and I specialise in conversion rate optimisation. I've always worked in retail for about 19 years now, and I've worked at big businesses like Mr. Porter and Amazon, where I worked for 8 years until 2023 when I left to start my consultancy. And I now work with small product brands to understand their customers and understand how their customers are navigating their websites, improve the customer experience, and ultimately increase their sales.
Amazing, thank you. And I invited you onto the podcast when I saw everything that you did, because I think it's just such an interesting topic and I think you can have so much useful information for everyone listening. Let's start, Carolina, with, so obviously, as you explained, you've got a lot of experience, but what are some of the common conversion challenges you see, regardless of the size of the business or where they're selling?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think from a business perspective, something that's across kind of big and small brands is that decisions tend to be made based on internal beliefs much more than based on kind of customer realities. And for small brands, that is commonly because, they don't have the time to really understand how customers are using their site or really what that means, what their customers need and how their site experience could be better. Or they maybe don't have the in-house capability to kind of look at that. And for big businesses, often, there's internal hierarchies and decisions can often be made kind of top down. So they can be quite subjective and driven by one person's opinion and the kind of loudest or most senior opinion in the room. So I think there's a real opportunity in any business, any retail business of any size, to focus more on the customer and understanding more about what's going to help them get the result that they need as quickly as possible.
Thank you. That's a really good insight. And do you have any suggestions on how people can go about doing that, how they can identify what's important to customers?
Yes, loads of ideas. And there's loads of different ways that we can do this, some of which we already have, at our disposal. It's just about using it and looking at the right things. So the first place I would start would be your site performance analytics. So depending on what platform we're talking about, whether it's kind of in Shopify or on Amazon, you'll have access to certain analytics that you can look at. So you can measure metrics like what is your conversion rate, how much traffic are you getting, how many orders are you getting, what's your bounce rate, so how many people are coming onto the site and just leaving after viewing one page. And then on top of that, there's lots of interesting tools. Heat map analysis is a great place to start to understand how people are using your site, where they're interacting, how far they're scrolling, all of that kind of more behavioral data. There's also customer service data that people don't typically think of as a source of understanding your customer. But if you think about what questions you're commonly getting through your customer services contacts, whether that's through Instagram DMs or emails or through a call center if you have one, all of that kind of information can help you understand, oh, okay, this is a common question that we're getting about this particular product. So what could we do to make this information more easily accessible so that people aren't having to ask us this question all the time? You can obviously also run customer research. So that could be a survey or a usability study or small kind of research focus groups to really understand what customers are looking for, what could make their site experience easier and quicker. If all of that kind of feels a bit out of reach, then a really simple exercise is like a walk the store. So essentially that looks like, enlisting the help of a few family members or friends and setting them a task on your website. So it could be something like try and buy a gift for this type of person in this type of budget. And literally watching them do that. So sitting behind them, watching them do it on their phone or on their computer, and really seeing how they navigate their store. And that's really insightful because as small brand founders, they tend to, they're so close to the product and so close to their site that they can't see it objectively. And they won't shop in the same way that their customers will, which is really varied anyway. We kind of assume that people shop in the same way that we do, but they don't. So actually shedding light and actually watching somebody else navigate your site can really be a great way to identify kind of friction points and areas of potential opportunity.
Those are all great suggestions. Thank you. And I'm so with you that when you're close to something, it's really hard to think about what you know versus what other people know, because I come across this a lot with brands I work with. I'm sure you do too, where they'll be talking about their product, or I'll look at their product listing and there's something that's glaringly obvious that's missing, but to the founder, because they know their product so intimately, it's implied. I think we call it implied knowledge, don't we? You just forget what other people don't know.
Exactly.
So I think that must be something you come across quite often.
Definitely. Yeah, it is.
So imagine I think we'll keep on the subject of websites for a moment, if that's okay, because you mentioned them earlier, and I think your tips are great. So if we find that maybe there's a certain page where people are dropping off, or a certain point in the process, what are some simple things we can do to fix that?
So I think, there can be loads of different, you want to kind of get to the why people are dropping off, but that's hard to do, right? So I think a kind of quick sanity check for me would be clarity is the biggest reason, I suppose, that people drop off. People have very short attention spans. We have a million tabs open, like not only physically, but also in our brains. So we need to kind of make it really easy for people to check out and buy. But also, we need to make sure that we're kind of taking people along the journey that we want them to. So that could be on a product page, but if you're also thinking about your homepage, how are you getting people, through the funnel effectively? So whilst there's not kind of one simple thing I would say, I would just think about clarity always. So within the first couple of seconds of landing on your site, and again, it's very difficult for founders or their team members to think about this objectively, but how clear is it that what you're selling, what are the benefits, what are the uses of the product, are all of the attributes really clear? And I think this is where images are so powerful, because we are, if you think about the content that we are consuming all the time now through social media and other ways, it's all visual, and we are becoming increasingly visual in the way that we shop. So we want to be able to assess product attributes visually. So I would start with your imagery and the key attributes of your product. So that's through your product description and your title. Is it really, really, really clear to me? Like if you were describing this product to somebody who's never seen it before, doesn't know anything about it, are those key pieces of information really easy to assess through the visuals and through the information that's above the fold? So that's your product title and description.
Thank you. And sticking on the subject of websites, if that's okay, just for a minute, and then we will move on. When you look at a new brand's website or maybe their product listing, are there any red flags that you can spot immediately that tell you, okay, they're going to be losing conversions here?
Yeah, I think, again, it's that kind of lack of clarity perspective. So, as I said, within 2 seconds of landing on your site or particular page, it should be really obvious why I should buy this product. And also the other big area I would say would be lack of trust signals. So we know that social proof is so important. It's never been more important to consumers. Up to 98% of consumers are now using reviews to shape their purchasing decisions. So sites that just don't have any mention of, reviews or even other markers of product's popularity. So flagging things as bestsellers, for example, those are such big opportunities. And if they're untapped, then I would definitely say, that's one kind of red flag as such of missing conversion opportunity.
Thank you. Because I know it can be really tempting to spend your time tweaking layouts or updating your copy. I mean, all these things are important, aren't they? Because, you have to good text optimize for SEO and you need to have great images. But what would you suggest where would you suggest someone focuses their energy if they're looking at the website now and they're going, do you know what, I'm not getting the conversions that I'd like? What should they be focusing on? Because obviously there's so much involved in having a great product page, and it can be really tempting to go, I'm just going to overhaul all of it, but we're all short on time. Where should we be putting the most attention?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, I think that prioritization piece is really important, and that's got to come from that customer understanding. So that's actually what I would recommend, is kind of taking a step back. As you say, it's so easy to kind of tweak things, and we're being told from all angles what we should be doing, but we don't really know necessarily what's going to make the biggest impact for our particular product and our particular customer. So that's what we've got to start by understanding. Kind of taking a step back and really understanding where our customers are potentially coming up against friction. And you can do that by using all those tools and resources that I mentioned before. So things like heat map analysis, or, doing a walk the store activity, or, running a customer research. So all of those things will help you understand why people are potentially not buying. And then kind of starting from there. So prioritize with intention rather than just busying yourself with all of that work, and making sure that any changes you are making are in the direction of the customer, rather than just thinking, oh, well, I think this looks clearer, or I think this looks better. Because as we said, it's impossible to be objective about those things anyway. So, you can spend all your time kind of tweaking things and adding keywords and things. And whilst they might help, it's kind of a bit of you're going into the situation a bit blind. Whereas if you start from that kind of customer understanding point, then you know that you're making changes that are going to actually shift the needle for your customers.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think also having great SEO is obviously good for traffic, which is important, but then traffic and conversions obviously aren't the same thing as well. So you can have really high traffic, but you can have low conversions. Which is I think that's a really hard thing to manage, actually. How do you help brands understand the difference? Because I've definitely worked with brands where they've said, oh, we're not getting enough traffic. And when I look at the data, and I'm talking specifically on Amazon, they're getting tons of traffic. They're just either not getting clicks or they're not getting purchases.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And it's definitely something I come across a lot as well. It's that kind of there's definitely a default response, which is if your sales are low, you just need more traffic, you just need more footfall. And that's not always the case. And it's hard to know, the exact, or it's hard to say now without a specific example, what is that exact number that means you've got enough traffic and you need to focus on conversion. But what I would say for any brand listening is that, kind of look at your own benchmark. And if your traffic is growing year over year or month over month, or if you've got kind of a steady stream of traffic that kind of, doesn't fluctuate too much and is feasibly enough people landing that you should be making more sales. And on the flip side, if your conversion rate is sitting at around 1 or 2% or even lower than that, there's definitely opportunity. Think of the flip side of that number. So there's 98, 99, even 95% of people not buying. And I think that sometimes thinking about that flip side is quite a powerful perspective shift, because it makes us realize that actually, there is so much opportunity here. And the vast, vast majority of people landing on your site, that traffic, are not converting. And I always talk about this kind of like leaky bucket analogy, where you don't fix a leaky bucket just by pouring more water in. And in this case, obviously that water is the traffic. So just by driving more traffic, which can be really costly and competitive, we're not necessarily going to fix the friction or the issues that are already impacting the people who are on the site now. So just by focusing on those people who are already visiting and improving their experience and, encouraging more of them to purchase, it's a much more cost-effective way than just kind of going after loads of new customer acquisition. Whilst that can be a really valid strategy for some people in terms of, running ads and stuff, that's all part of that marketing funnel. You can't just neglect what happens when people actually land on your site or on your listing, because that's actually where the point of conversion happens. So it's got to be a bit of a combination of acquisition, traffic, and sales and conversion.
That makes a lot of sense. And actually, with brands that I work with, I always recommend they don't turn on ads unless their listings are as good as they possibly can be. So I'll obviously be talking Amazon. So unless they've got really great product listings and everything's as good as it can possibly be, and they've got some reviews, I always recommend not turning on ads, because if your listing isn't converting as well as it can be, as you said, adding more traffic to it, particularly paid traffic, isn't going to get you. I mean, maybe there's always going to be a percentage of people who are going to buy. So maybe you might increase your chance of a sale slightly. But actually, I think, coming back to what you said earlier, having product listings and product pages that are going to convert is probably the priority, aren't they, before thinking about traffic?
Yeah, definitely. You're so right. And I definitely always advocate for that kind of like getting your basics right before you really start driving traffic. Otherwise, you can just multiply the kind of the wasted traffic. And that can end up costing you a lot. So it's just, finding that right balance, I think.
And with that in mind, do you have like a tick list or a list of things that you'd say make up the high converting products page? If someone listing and they're going, well, I don't know whether my page is as well optimized as it could be, do you have a list of things that you would say are essential for a high converting page?
Yeah, I think the number one thing for me would be imagery. So as we said before, they're so important. We're increasingly looking towards visuals to help us make decisions about what we're purchasing. And our brains also process visuals much faster than text. So if you think about, assessing a product, it's much easier for us to look at an image and say, oh, okay, that meets my needs, rather than reading a whole long product description and working out whether it does. So images would be, making sure that we are showing the product from all angles. We're in an online environment, we can't pick up the product and look at it. So making sure that you're conveying all of that visually. And also, are you showing the packaging? Are you showing the kind of the uses of the product through the imagery? You can use infographics, you can use lifestyle imagery to do that. So I think imagery would be a really key area that I would focus on. And then also kind of, again, thinking along that basics line of making sure that all of the key information is there. It's your product title and it's your product description. So not only making sure all of that really key conversion driving information is included. So that's things like the product dimensions, what it's made of, how people can use it, what are the benefits that mean that customers should buy this one versus all the others on the market. It's making sure that's there, but it's also how is that information formatted and displayed, because that can also mean that customers are more or less likely to actually digest it and read it. So using bullet points that are really concise and scannable to make sure that people can really easily get that information. Those would be my kind of main areas. And then, as we talked about earlier as well, trust. So reviews are really important, and trying to build those reviews up to make sure that the customers can feel confident to purchase.
Thank you. Those are all really good points. And I want to touch a little bit more on trust, if that's okay, because I think if you're a small brand or a very new brand, you obviously don't have that. So what are some ways that smaller brands can start to build trust quickly with new customers? Because as you'll know, the longer you've been in business, the longer you've been selling, the more people have bought your products, the easier it is to have social proof and have some great reviews. But when you start, it is so hard.
It is really hard. That's true. And I think that some small brands also are put off by reviews, because I think, they're worried what happens if I get a negative review. But we know that a product that has negative reviews still converts better than a product with no reviews. So they are really important. And it also gives you an opportunity to reply to your reviews and, kind of get your voice as the brand out there. So some practical ways that I would say to build up reviews if you're a new brand or a small brand would be, you've got to ask your customers. And that sounds really obvious, but I work with a lot of brands that, maybe at best they've got a review flow set up. So, somebody buys something and they ask them for a review at in a relevant time frame to the product type. But it often stops there. You've got to ask more than once. You've got to encourage people to actually write the review. Most customers, especially those supporting small brands, they want to support you and they're happy to leave the review. They just forget. And, you ask them, their inboxes are flooded, they forget. So following up and asking for reviews, like through all of your channels, not just email, but you can also use social media to do that. If there's a particular product that's maybe not converting as well, or it's new and you really want to build up reviews, think about how you can, send a targeted campaign around that product and really try and build up the reviews. You can offer an incentive to try and encourage more people, to review, but then it also can lead to a follow-up purchase from that specific customer. So that's something that a lot of clients have had success with. And always make sure that you're engaging with your review. So replying back, not only does it kind of encourage that conversation, it also allows you to put your point across as the brand owner.
That's some really good advice. Thank you. And I think you're right. While the advice is so simple, I'm sure there were so many of us who just are. I mean, I can speak for myself. I should be asking clients for testimonials. I very rarely do.
Yes.
And it is just an ask, isn't it? So I think a lot of us know this, but thank you for the reminder, because
and I think
knowing it and doing it are two different things.
Two different things, exactly. And I think that also we sometimes worry that, too much time has passed now. But actually, there's always a way to run a kind of one-off campaign where you can say, we're a new business, or we're a small business and we're really trying to get the word out there, help us to shape the experience of other shoppers. So, you can even ask people 6 months back, as long as you're kind of reminding them what they've purchased and, making it really clear as to why you're asking now. I think there's ways that you can do that. And like you said, thinking about my own business, I've definitely asked for reviews late is better than never, basically. So where I haven't done it, in the spur of the moment, I've kind of have gone back and explained why I've done it late. So it can work that way as well.
That's really good advice. Thank you. And I think it's really nice to have that reassurance. I think a lot of us think, oh no, it's been too long and I haven't done it. And you can tie yourself in knots. So thank you for giving us all permission to go and do that all retrospectively. So Carolina, you mentioned earlier that you spent 8 years at Amazon. So I cannot let this opportunity go past to ask you, from your experience, what helps a product convert really well on Amazon specifically? Because obviously it's slightly different from having your own website.
Yes, it definitely is. And it can be a bit of an adjustment for, brands to kind of understand the way that Amazon works. But I think your point earlier was spot on about fixing your basics. And it's not a sexy answer. It's not exciting, but it is going to make the difference for you. And so when I used to work at Amazon and would work directly with brands, there's definitely a compulsion to kind of focus more on the marketing side of things and how do I get my brand out there? And it's all about discoverability, and that's what brands focus on. And whilst that is really important, it's a bit like we were talking about the difference between conversion and traffic. It's most important to make sure that your listing and all the basics are in the best shape possible. So again, that's looking at your product title, your bullet points in your description and your imagery, and making sure that you know what kinds of keywords and terms are people using to search for a product like yours, and then incorporating them in a relevant way. So not in a kind of keyword spammy way, but in a really relevant, natural way into all of those areas on your site. So your title, your description, your bullet points. And again, kind of sense checking against that clarity of like, is this really as clear as it can be? Strip out as much kind of wording that you don't need as possible and just leave in what's really important, kind of conversion driving information.
That's so useful. Thank you. And I love the point about only leaving in what's relevant, because I see two types of listing on Amazon. I see the ones where there's a list of bullet points that don't really tell you anything other than features. And then I see the ones where it's so lengthy that you're like, okay, what am I going to get from this? Because I think most of us, like you said, are so time poor that we just need like the relevant bits, the things that are actually going to tell us, is this for me or is this not for me? So that's a really good point. Thank you.
And Amazon, I guess, as well, is quite unique in that most kind of Shopify brands that I work with have a really low, most customers there are navigating via the navigation. They're browsing using the collections and going that way. Whereas on Amazon, the vast majority of users are searching because the product catalogue is so big. big that it's not easy to browse on there. So, all of those things that I've mentioned about understanding which keywords to use and where to use them are going to directly influence how discoverable you are in the search results as well. So not only do they make, once people land on your site, on your listing, more compelling, but they also actually directly help your discoverability. So it's a bit like SEO on when we're talking about a website as well. A lot of the kind of changes that you can make to the front end and to the product listing are going to actually have a positive impact in the back end and on SEO or search discoverability for Amazon. So that's really important as well. And then obviously reviews, as we've talked about.
Yes, there is a lot, isn't there? I find on Amazon, for me, I think the product listing is even more important and I think this probably applies to any third party marketplace, but Amazon particularly, because you look at any product listing on Amazon and there are so many other options. It's really easy to click off to this recommended product, or do you know what I mean? There's so much there to divert your attention. I think your listing has to be really, really compelling, because I know myself as a customer, if I've got a question mark, if I'm not 100% sure that something's what I'm looking for, I've just got so many more other options. I'll just move on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think reviews are really like a differentiator in that perspective as well. So anything you can do to build up your reviews is really helpful.
That's brilliant advice. Thank you. So when resources are limited, because for lots of us, we might be time poor, we might not have a lot of budget, how can we prioritise what to fix first so that we get the biggest return?
So
I'm thinking about conversions.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, again, kind of it's probably sound like a broken record, sorry, but coming back to kind of letting your customer data really shape your prioritization. So, if you, in simple terms, that could look like working out where are most people coming into your site? Are they entering your site? What's the landing page entry point? Is it your homepage? Or is it a collections page, or is it a product page? And then, using that to help guide you. Okay, well, actually, most or 50% of customers are coming in on a product page, for example, because I'm running ads that are going, taking people directly there. Then actually, let's focus there and not think about the fact that people might be coming in via homepage and then go to a collection and that kind of typical user journey. And then also, look at where the biggest drop-offs are. Where's your highest bounce rate, for example, and definitely prioritize based on that. And then always prioritizing mobile over desktop. And I think that, obviously this varies site to site, but typically we're seeing kind of about 60 to 80% of people accessing sites on their mobile, whereas us as people working on the websites and the founders are all doing everything on their desktop. So again, there can be a bit of a disconnect between the way that you think people are shopping and how they're actually shopping. So always focusing on mobile is going to have your biggest impact as well.
Thank you. And I think that is such a good reminder. And again, it's one of these things that we know, but how many of us actually go and look at our own websites on our phone, for example? Because like you said, I do everything on my browser. And it might be that when you look on them on a screen, like there's text that's too small to read, or who knows. So thank you, because that's really good.
Sometimes like overlaying call to actions, where pop-ups come and then we haven't kind of reviewed the whole experience on mobile. That can be a really common one that I see.
That's really useful. Thank you. And by the way, do not worry ever about repeating anything, because I think it really helps for it all to sink in, actually.
Okay,
it's
good.
Really useful. And so the other thing I'd like to ask Carolina is, are there any myths about conversion and conversion rates that you hear that you just think, I wish people would just let that one go because it's not true?
I think definitely what we've talked about around traffic and conversion. So that kind of like, I need more sales, that means I need more traffic. That's a big kind of myth that I try to bust. Like you don't necessarily need to spend on ads to get more sales, and actually a more sustainable way to scale your sales is through focusing on the people that you've already got on your site and just getting more of them to shop. Another one I think that I sometimes come up against is people just think conversion rate optimization means like changing a call to action button, like changing the color of it or changing the size of it. And it's actually so much more than that. That can be part of it, but it's more about holistically thinking about that whole shopper journey and where are those points of friction? Where are people dropping off? Where are you losing people attention? and actually addressing all of those areas, which can actually span loads of different things. It's not just usability, it's not just design, it's things like even just the wording you use in your product descriptions and titles, like we've covered in this chat. So it's much broader than just little design tweaks here and there. It's really helping your customers shop more easily, and that means discovering products, it means assessing products, and it means actually buying and checking out with ease and more seamlessly.
Thank you. And something I've taken from this whole conversation is if we put the customer first, we probably can't go far wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way for anyone to run a business. But it's also not that easy to do because we can feel quite detached from our customers. We're not, especially if you're on a third party marketplace where you're not having that direct access to the customer as such. So, it can be easy to lose sight of it. So just, again, encouraging anyone to use those kind of like walk the store techniques or anything. If you're selling on Amazon, you've probably got your own presence through social media or other channels. So using that to kind of connect to your customers and trying to keep them front of mind, definitely.
Thank you. And now our final question, Carolina, if that's okay. So if someone wants to improve their conversion rate right now, what's your number one piece of advice? What's the top thing that you would recommend they go away and do?
So again, it's going to be understanding customers and, that kind of putting together that kind of piece around why. And then from there, you can, think about, again, that kind of clarity piece and that trust piece. So people need to understand what they're buying and see the benefits, and they also need to feel confident to buy from you. We've never seen as many kind of scam websites as we see today, and people's confidence is definitely eroding through those experiences. So we need to make people feel really confident to purchase from us. And if you're on a third party site like Amazon, obviously you already have that built in. But I'm thinking more specifically about small business websites. So things like Trustpilot ratings, customer reviews, having just a really professional, polished looking website that has all of your kind of key information included in your footer. People kind of forget about their footer as like, oh, nobody looks at that, it's at the bottom of the page. But actually, because it's present throughout your site, its cumulative views can be really high, and people kind of navigate there when they want to check something. So having like all of those kind of trust signals there can really help as well. So definitely clarity and trust are the two biggest drivers around conversion, but really understanding how your customers are navigating and where they're coming up against issues is the key place to start, I would say.
Thank you so much. And I did say that was the last question, but I just thought of one more, which I hope is okay.
Of course.
Which is around the actual process of buying. Because I know for myself, because I was just thinking about an experience I had literally a few days ago where I gave up on someone's site because the checkout process, it was when you were talking about trust. It was like I was going to be entering all my card details in, and I was like, I don't actually know if this is a legitimate site. I think it is, but I don't know. And there was no PayPal button. And I was like, do you know what? I don't feel comfortable putting my card details in here, so I'm just going to abandon my cart and leave. Does the actual checkout process have an impact on conversions?
It definitely does, yes. And so, if you're on Amazon or if you're with Shopify, then those are quite trusted. Using like Shop Pay, for example, those are quite trusted, and you'll typically have a range of payment options available. But definitely, and I think people are really clued into kind of that as I said, that kind of like scam website issues that people are having. So I think the checkout process needs to be clean, and it needs to strike the right balance between, if you think about Amazon specifically and how easy it makes it for people to check out, you can't be asking for too much information because that can spook people, and it also just adds friction. But equally, you can't have, basically no payment options or very limited payment options that makes people question the legitimacy of your site. So I think it's a bit of a balance to get that right, that checkout process right. But yes, definitely with the kind of bigger platforms, they bring with them a certain element of credibility, which is obviously helpful for small businesses.
Thank you. And thank you for asking that last minute question that I just threw in then. But
Yeah,
it was when you were talking about trust that did occur to me, because I think that we can spend a lot of time focusing on our site and our listings, but actually it could be something as small as the process of checkout that is the thing that trips somebody up, and that might be something that we actually hadn't considered.
Yeah, and I think also, like, on the flip side of that, not only tripping people up, but also there's opportunities to upsell things in car and in checkout that loads of brands often miss. So recommendations are often on product pages, but then they're not flowed through into the checkout experience and the cart page. And so not only could you potentially lose people there, you could also be maximizing those experiences and making them convert better and making it easier for people to add on complementary items or, you know, things that pair well with what they're already buying. So there's loads of opportunity in cart and checkout for sure.
That's such a good point. Thank you. I promise that really was the last question. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everything you've shared. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too. I've really enjoyed the chat. Thanks so much, Vicky.
Thank you so much for listening right to the end of this episode. Do remember that you can get the full back catalogue and lots of free resources on my website, vickyweinberg.com. Please do remember to rate and review this episode if you've enjoyed it, and also share it with a friend who you think might find it useful. Thank you again, and see you next week. Hello, if you're a listener of Bring Your Product Idea to Life, you might like to know that I'm running a free call on Thursday the 26th of February for anyone who's selling products on Amazon or planning to and would like some practical support and a chance to talk things through together. I know so many Amazon sellers and I thought it'd be really nice to bring people together. It'll be a really relaxed session. I'll be sharing a few updates on upcoming Amazon changes, and there'll be plenty of time for questions and discussion about what's working, what's not, anything you want to chat about Amazon related. You're very welcome to come along and talk, or you can just listen in. I would love to see you there if you're able to join, and you'll find the link to book your place in the show notes for this episode.